This is The Long Road to Publishing, the podcast where we hear from authors who have traveled a long and bumpy road to publishing their books. Whether you're just starting out on your own writing and publishing journey, or if you're all too aware of the many possible detours along the way, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Eva Langston, author, writing instructor, and creator of Eva's newsletter for writers on Substack. Thank you so much for coming along on the ride. In a few days, it'll be 2026, so I wanted to take time to reflect on this year and the first 16 episodes of The Long Road to Publishing. So today it's just me talking at you, but I'll try to keep it short and hopefully entertaining. I'll also tell you a little bit about what's to come on the show and give you info on how you can win a copy of Courtney Maum's incredibly helpful book, Before and After the Book Deal, a writer's guide to finishing, publishing, promoting, and surviving your first book. So, reflection time. First of all, can I just say, I am so happy I decided to start this podcast. Thank you to all my guests and to everyone who has been listening this year. It's been incredibly rewarding to know there are people out there on the other end listening to this pet project of mine. As I'm sure I have mentioned multiple times on the show, I had 2 novels die on submission, which means that my agent wasn't able to sell them to any of the major publishers, even though we both thought they were pretty darn good. You know, that's where I was kind of at the end of 2024, and I was, not feeling super great about it. This podcast was exactly what I needed to lift my spirits and get my confidence back. In talking to my guests, I realized just how common it is for books to die on submission. And creating the show has given me not only a desperately needed sense of control in a business where very little is in my control, but it's also just given me a great feeling of community. I've met so many amazing writers this year, and talking to the people on my show have made me realize that I'm not alone in this journey. I'm definitely not the only one struggling. And if I keep at it, I will get there eventually. Or at least I will get somewhere, even if it might not look the way I originally imagined it. And, in reflecting on this year, I feel like I have gotten somewhere. It's not a book deal like I'd hoped, but I like this place where I am now. I have a thriving podcast that is actually generating a very small stream of revenue. I'm teaching writing workshops, working as a writing coach, meeting awesome writers, running a Substack newsletter with almost 7,000 followers, and I'm also continuing to work on writing and revising my novels and having fun with it. So really, I feel really happy about my career, even though it doesn't look the way I thought it would by this point. With the long road to publishing, I've created something I'm proud of, something I think is helpful for others, something that I can share with the world right now, which is exactly what I needed. I've gotten so many no's while pursuing traditional publishing. It feels good to do something that doesn't require anyone else's stamp of approval. And as cheesy as it sounds, it feels good to say yes to myself. These 16 episodes have given me encouragement, confidence, and great advice, and I do hope that it's doing the same thing for you. Speaking of confidence, I really owe a lot to the other podcast I work on, This Mama Is Lit, which is a writing and motherhood podcast from Literary Mama, and you should definitely go and check it out. Being co-host there gave me the confidence and experience I needed to start my own show. I've been co-host of This Mama Is Lit since May of 2024. And when I first joined the show, or even I think when I was interviewing for the co-host position, they told me they were in the process of hiring a new audio editor. And they were like, we're going to each take turns editing an episode until we hire someone new. Are you okay with that? And I am not a tech person. And so I was like, I'm really not a tech person. I'll give it a try. I'll do my best. So I ended up audio editing the Catherine Newman episode for This Mama Is Lit. And I was really pretty daunted by it at first, and it took me forever. But it turned out I really enjoyed it. Once I figured out the basics of GarageBand, It really wasn't too hard. And talk about control. Audio editing is like being the god of the conversation. You can cut out the boring parts, you can cut out the awkward pauses, you can even switch stuff around if you want to make the conversation flow better. You can take out maybe one third of the likes and ums and you knows. Sometimes people will be like, "Oh, Eva, you sound so polished on your podcast." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, I cut out about half of the ums and you knows." So that's why. And maybe also has a little to do with my fancy microphone. I don't know. Anyway, in some bittersweet news, I have decided to step down as co-host from This Mama Is Lit. It was a really hard decision because it's such a great group of women and I've had such a good experience there, but I can feel myself becoming stretched too thin, with my kids and my writing and all the other things I'm trying to do. And so I've decided to say goodbye, at least for now, to This Mama Is Lit. I'm likely going to stay on until they find another co-host, and we do record stuff in advance, so you'll hear me on the podcast for probably, I don't know, at least maybe another 5 months or something. But we are looking to hire a new co-host now. So if you are a mom who might be interested in co-hosting a podcast and, interviewing books that have something to say about motherhood, now is the time. Go to the Literary Mama website for more information. Okay, now let's talk about this season that we just had of The Long Road to Publishing. I really tried hard to get a variety of different authors with a variety of different experiences. But if there's a type of author or a type of publishing journey you haven't heard and or you would like to hear more of on the show, feel free to reach out and let me know. I'm here. I'm happy to take suggestions. Now, just for fun, I put together a few superlatives for 2025, which I'm going to share with you now. The first episode recorded was episode 8, the book that came back to life with Kat Lewis. We recorded in March 2025, and then I sat on the episode and didn't release it until September because I was hoping that we would have a release date for her book by then. But we still, I think, don't have an exact date. It's coming out summer of 2026. So everybody look for Good People by Kat Lewis coming out sometime in 2026. But I really appreciate Kat for being my guinea pig, for being my very first interview for the show. The longest episode goes to episode 14, Spilling the Tea on Self-Publishing Success with Rebecca Thorne. Rebecca is so knowledgeable. She has so much to say about the publishing industry. She has had such a wild publishing story. Her episode clocked in at 67 minutes. I'm sure we could have recorded for like 5 hours, but we didn't. And although I must say, Rebecca's episode was long, but episode 1 with Courtney Maum was a close second in this category. Moving on, the easiest episode to edit was episode 4, The Most Positive Person in Publishing with Evelyn Skye. I'm thinking maybe it's because Evelyn hosts her own podcast, or, she's a best-selling author who has now published 10 novels, and maybe she's just so used to doing interviews. She's just knows how to speak perfectly. I don't know, but she was so well spoken, I hardly had to edit out anything. The most unique episode goes to episode 7, Influencer Imprints and a Novel 20 Years in the Making with Esperanza Hope Snyder and Marinas Alvarez. This was my only episode with 2 guests. So I had the author, Esperanza, and her acquiring editor, Marinas, who is also a book influencer on Book Talk and YouTube. So it was a very unique episode where we got the perspective from both the author and her acquiring editor, and also information about this new publishing model at Bindery where they have book influencers involved in the process. So if you haven't listened to that one, it's definitely worth it. It's very interesting. The best background during our Zoom call interview goes to episode 13, From Indie Romance to a Big Five Debut with Kate Broad. Okay, seriously, go to my Instagram account. It's just Eva Langston on Instagram and look at my Long Road Superlatives post to see the photo. Kate has this enormous floor to ceiling bookshelf behind her. It almost looks fake, like a computer generated background, but it is absolutely real. She really does have that many books in her apartment, and it looks fantastic. The most popular episode goes to episode 2, From Feeling Like a Failure to New York Times bestseller, with thriller author Julia Bartz. Julia's episode has gotten the most listens so far. Congratulations, Julia. Maybe because we are all hoping to go from feeling like a failure to a New York Times instant bestseller one day. And finally, the best overall episode goes to. Just kidding. There's no way I could decide that, nor would I even want to. I think all of the episodes are fascinating. They are all the best in their own way. So if you have any downtime or travel time over the holidays, consider catching up on any episodes you missed. And actually, I created this quote unquote index for the 2025 episodes that I shared as a post on Instagram. It's not by any means comprehensive, it's more just for fun, but you can check that out. And it tells you, for example, which episodes discuss screenwriting or agent relationships or self publishing. So it might be helpful if you're trying to figure out which episodes to prioritize. But again, it does not include by any means all of the topics that we cover in these episodes. As for what's coming in the new year, I have already recorded several interviews that I think you'll enjoy, and I've got plans for more. In 2026, we'll have our first sci-fi author, Lincoln Michelle, and our first picture book author, Shanna Upchurch. We'll also hear from best-selling author Cynthia Swanson, who was named Indie Author of the Year in 2025. And I recently talked to middle grade fantasy author Raida Shah Ideal, who lives in Malaysia. So we had to navigate a 13-hour time difference to record our interview. But I'm so glad that we did. I'm so glad we figured out the time difference. I am time zone challenged. So I was like very confused at first, but we figured out a time that worked for both of us. I will also say that if you have pitched me and you haven't heard back from me, first of all, you might very well hear back from me. I have got a lot of people in my list of potential guests, and you might be one of them, even if I haven't reached out to you yet. So, for example, Cynthia Swanson, I'm just getting around to interviewing her now, but she has been on my list of potential guests since the beginning. So, even if I haven't reached out to you yet, you might still hear from me. Second of all, I am getting a lot of pitches, and unfortunately, I will not be able to fit them all in. So if you don't hear from me in the coming year, please know it's not because I don't want to hear your publishing story. One thing I've learned in doing this podcast is that pretty much everyone has a really interesting path to publishing, and I really do wish I had time to do an episode on each and every one of you. So again, I apologize if you don't hear from me. Please don't take it personally. I just don't have infinite time and I'm trying to release this podcast every other week, and I'm sort of cheating, and I'm sometimes releasing more than that. But I also, again, I don't want to overwhelm myself and stretch myself too thin. So this would not be an end of year wrap up if we didn't talk about New Year's goals, right? My goal in 2025 was to create the podcast and get enough listens to qualify for ads, which I did. Yay! Hopefully, the ads aren't too annoying. I am trying to keep them to a minimum because my only goal in terms of money is to have the podcast pay for itself. Basically, the hosting site I use has an annual fee, and if I make enough in ad revenue to cover the hosting fee, then I'll be happy. But now I need a new podcast goal for 2026. And I feel like my listeners have plateaued. Like, I have a healthy group of people who seem to be tuning in to each episode, but now I want to branch out and find new listeners and maybe see my listens go up by 10 or even 20% by the end of 2026. Is that possible? I don't know. I know there are a lot of podcasts. There's a lot of podcasts about writing out there. Everything's competing for people's attention. So we'll see. But I do feel like there are a lot of people out there who would probably enjoy my podcast if they knew about it. So I just have to figure out how to let them know about it. So in the spirit of trying to accomplish this goal, I have created a little book giveaway contest to encourage all of you who are listening right now to share about the podcast and help me find some new listeners. Since my very first episode was with Courtney Maum, I will be giving away a copy of her book, Before and After the Book Deal, A Writer's Guide to Finishing, Publishing, Promoting, and Surviving Your First Book. Seriously, this is a book every writer should own, and if you already have it, great, but you could always gift this copy to another writer in your life, so don't let that stop you from entering the contest. Here is how you qualify to win the free book. First, you share about the long road to publishing on the social media platform of your choice. Substack, Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, etc. TikTok, I don't go on TikTok, but you can do it there if that's the place where you are. YouTube, I guess, that can work too. Anyway, this can be as easy as saying, I've really been enjoying listening to The Long Road to Publishing. You could maybe include a link, if that's possible, to the show. You could post about a specific episode, whatever you want to do. If you need or want an image to go along with your post, feel free to email me and I'll give you some options, or you can screenshot something from my social media. Oh yeah, I also just recently got on LinkedIn. I honestly, I'm like not trying very hard on it, but I was like, oh, well, it's another social media site that some of my guests are on, so why not get on there too? So I'm on there as well. Anyway, so that's step one, just sharing about the podcast on the social media platform of your choice. Then you email a screenshot of your post to me at longroad.pub@gmail.com. Or you can tag me in the post if it's a social media platform where I am, like Instagram, Blue Sky, Substack, etc. And then make sure that when you email me from an address that you check, because this is what I will use to contact you if you win. And again, my email is longroad.pub@gmail.com. And feel free to use that if you have questions about the contest as well. The deadline is January 15th. Feel free to share multiple times on multiple platforms, but your name will only be entered into the drawing once because I feel like that is all I can handle. I don't want it to get too complicated. I have never done a giveaway like this before, and my fear is that no one will enter it and I will feel dumb. So please go ahead and enter. What have you got to lose, right? On January 16th, I'll randomly select a winner and mail you a copy of the book. Okay, that's all I wanted to share with you all today. I hope you all have a happy new year, and here is to good things, writing and otherwise, in 2026. Please keep listening to the show, and if you haven't already, consider subscribing to my newsletter for writers on Substack. Oh, and also, I feel like I got a lot of reviews for the podcast when I first started, and then I haven't gotten any more. So if you have time to write a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, feel free to do that as well. That would be amazing. Okay. I appreciate you all. Thanks for your support, and you'll be hearing from me in the new year. Thanks so much for listening to The Long Road to Publishing. All the books we discuss on the podcast can be found at my bookshop shop, the link for which is in the show notes. You can find me online on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack with the handle Eva Langston. Even better, subscribe to my newsletter for writers at evalangston.substack.com and feel free to send me an email. The podcast address is longroad.pub@gmail.com. The Long Road to Publishing is produced and edited by me, Eva Langston, and the intro-outro music comes from the artist's sound roll on Upbeat. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and I'll be back soon with more publishing stories and more tips for the road.